So the Linux Mint installation process, let's move on to this here. So it says the live session. So this is what's really cool, I think, about Linux is you can do what's called a live session. This is when you boot the computer from the USB stick or the DVD, Linux Mint starts a live session. It says it logs you in automatically as a user called Mint, and it shows you a desktop with the installer on it. So the user part doesn't really matter, but in this case, but pretty much what happens is it says a live session is similar to a normal session, and a normal session is when Linux Mint is permanently installed on the computer. It says, but with the following exception, this says the live session is slower. So it is loaded from the USB flash drive, USB thumbstick, whatever, or the DVD, as opposed to being on a solid state drive or a hard disk drive. So as opposed to being on your computer's internal hard drive, which would be faster speed-wise. It says changes you make in the live session are not permanent. So this is the cool part. It's like they are not written to the USB stick or DVD, and they do not impact the system installed by the installer. So pretty much what this is saying is that you could, in theory, like you could take your USB thumbstick that you made in the previous steps with the, you installed the flash drive, you flashed the, you flashed the USB thumbstick to become a live install USB, basically, or you burned it to a DVD, the ISO file to a DVD, and you made it that way. So what that allows you to do is you could take any computer that you want, even a Mac, a Windows computer, whatever, and you could put that USB into that computer, or put the DVD in there and boot from it without really messing up the other system. Like you could run Linux anywhere you go, even if you're on a live session. Even if that computer doesn't have Linux installed onto it. So it's really neat, I think, because it's not like super useful for everyday stuff. Like everyday use, you would for your home computers or whatever, you would want to have it installed normally, because then you can actually use the computer more like you would like to. But you can take Linux with you everywhere you go if you want. With the live session, you could have your version of Linux, or a version of Linux, with you, even on computers that don't have it installed, or wouldn't normally be able to do that. And it's kind of a no impact setup. So if you had a storage solution with you too, like a separate USB stick maybe to store files on, you could access them in the live session, or whatever, and you can write data to the storage USB, or whatever you want to do, but you don't have to mess up the computer that you're on. So it could even be a Windows computer, and you need something from Linux, or you're used to working in Linux or whatever, and then you have that option with this live session functionality. You can try it out. You can run software. You can browse the internet, whatever, as long as you've got the, internet access and everything to the connections. And it's not saving anything permanently onto the computer until you install Linux Mint fully from the live session. It says here that some applications work differently or not at all in the live session. So, like Update Manager, for example, wouldn't do much, because that's Linux's system for its updates, like Windows updates, and if it's not installed onto that computer, then it hasn't got anything to update, because it's not really installed anything. So that wouldn't do much. Same with like some of these other ones that it mentions would be a little bit different. So, but it says installing Linux Mint. So mainly this would be like your trial. You can think of it like a demo or something. Is the live session, so you can play around with Linux. You can see what it's like for yourself without really committing fully at this point if it's still on the live session. So that might be a good thing to try until you feel like, okay, yeah, this is kind of cool. Maybe I want to try it on my computer after all, or whatever. And then you would go on to the installation. So it says installing Linux Mint on the computer. So to permanently install it, double-click Install Linux Mint and select your language. So there is an option right on the main desktop screen. It's kind of hard to see in this picture, but it says install Linux Mint right there. So from the live session, that's one of the main options that you'll see, and that's how you would begin that process. Is just double click on that, and it would begin to do that. It'll just walk you through each step here. You start with the language. Select the language. Connect to the internet. So a lot of the functionality will need internet of some kind. So you would connect to your home internet network, and you just put in all the credentials and stuff related to that. It says if you are connected to the internet, tick the box to install multimedia codecs. So this is install third-party software for graphics and Wi-Fi hardware, Flash, MP3, and other media. Yeah, so this is generally something you'll want to do just for better compatibility with your hardware. It says the software is subject to license terms included with its documentation. Some is proprietary, meaning some is not open source. And that's just the way of things. It's one of those things where it's one of those things where you take a bit of concessions for the sake of functionality and compatibility. But you do have the option. You don't have to install those things. You can use fully open source options, alternatives, if you choose. Depending on your use case for the system and your needs, I would say the average person is probably going to want to check that box to install the third-party software, because it will make a more agreeable, smoother, easier experience overall. But that's not going to be the case for necessarily everybody out there, and you can always go back in and install these things after the fact if need be. You don't have to do it right from the start here in this installation. So that's another option. So you could say leave that unchecked and say skip that for now, and then if you change your mind later while you're using Mint, you say, oh man, I really need those Wi-Fi drivers or whatever, then you can go back in and get access to that as needed. But it's easier to set it up at the start here for most people, I would say. And then it says choose an installation type. So here is where it gets a little bit particular. This is probably one of the most important steps. It says the computer currently has Linux. Okay, so in their example, they already had Linux Mint installed on it. So the options are erase disk and install Linux Mint. So that one, if you click that, it says warning. This will delete all your programs, documents, photos, music, and any other files in all operating systems. So pretty much this does exactly what it says on the tin here. Erases your disk. Whatever your current hard drive is on your computer has on it will be gone. So your personal files that you hopefully made backups for ahead of time. If you haven't made backups for your personal files, do not continue with this process. Go back, make your backups. Back up your important files before you do anything with this, and that way you don't lose them. Make sure you take the time to be thorough, because this is not going anywhere. This installation, you can always come back to it. So be thorough in your backups. Make sure you've got your bookmarks, your every possible thing that you can think of, your documents, your pictures, your movies, your music, all of it, like everything that you're interested in that is part of your life digitally, especially the stuff that you can't get back easily, like I was saying before. Make sure you have a backup copy of that, because then once you do this, if you do the erase disk, then it all goes away, including your existing operating system. So if you were on Windows and you say, I'm done with Windows, and I know I'm done with Windows and I'm never going back, then you would erase your disk completely. And if you do that, it says encrypt the new Linux Mint installation for security. It says you will choose the security key on the next step. So that's optional, the encryption. And it says use LVM with the new Linux Mint installation. This will set up a logical volume management. It allows taking snapshots and easier partition resizing. So that's not something the average person is going to need necessarily. That's more of an advanced user setting, and if you know enough to understand what that's talking about, then you will know whether or not you want to use that for your installation. And then the other option here says something else. It says you can create or resize partitions yourself or choose multiple partitions for Linux Mint. So this would be, the something else option is what you would use if you want to do dual booting. If you want to keep Windows or whatever you've already got on your system and you want to install Linux Mint alongside of it, then you would use a something else option. And it says if Linux Mint is the only operating system you want to run on this computer and all data can be lost on the hard drive, choose erase disk and install Linux Mint. And then here it's got a warning that says the encryption option refers to full disk encryption. At this stage of the installation, your keyboard layout wasn't yet selected, so it is set to ENUS. If you decide to use this option, keep this in mind when entering a password. Okay. Yeah, so that's more of a specific use case, but it says if another operating system is present on the computer, the installer shows you an option to install Linux Mint alongside it. If you choose this option, the installer automatically resizes your existing operating system, makes room, and installs Linux Mint beside it. And that's not actually shown on here, I guess. Yeah, so that's that. I said that if you could choose something else to install dual boot, but if Windows was already on your system, it would say install Linux Mint alongside Windows, and that's the option it was talking about there. It will handle the size of everything, and the something else option though is a little bit better because it allows you to choose your own size for if you think of the hard drive space as that back of that circle that we saw in the earlier part about when talking about storage capacity and everything, if you think of that like a pie or something, the something else option allows you to choose the size of the pie that you give to Windows and the size of the pie that you give to Linux Mint. So like if you figure your hard disk is one of those pies and the install it alongside Windows option just automatically does it for you. It automatically decides, okay, Windows you get 3/4 of the pie, and Linux Mint you get 1/4 of the pie, or whatever. But with the something else option, you can say, no, I want to specify, Linux Mint gets 100 gigabytes on my hard drive, and that's it, or something like that. Then that's where the something else allows you to come into play. It says if you want to manage the partitions or specify which partitions to use, select something else. So that's partitions is basically your piece of the pie. So you can say, it says Linux Mint requires one partition to be mounted. Okay, so you have to have at least one spot for it. So the Linux Mint operating system without additional software or personal data takes roughly 15 gigabytes. So give this partition a decent size, and it recommends 100 gigabytes or more. I would say if you have the space for it, do more than that. Do like at least 200, 250, something like that, if you can afford it space-wise. And it says ext4 is recommended as the most popular Linux file system. And yeah, that is true. So use as ext4 journaling file system. That'll be the default on there. You won't have to worry about that too much. But you can see here the size option. You can change the size, and this is going to vary depending on the size of your hard drive, what its capacity is. So it says also create a swap partition. It's used for hibernation as a safety buffer in case your computer runs out of memory. Is this partition a size equal to the amount of memory in your computer? I feel like in the more recent releases of Linux Mint, that when this was written, I feel like it does it automatically for you. I might be wrong, but in any case, yeah. So the easy option will be install alongside, Windows or whatever. If you just want them to both be on the computer at the same time and you're not worried about how much space either one has available. Otherwise, something else would be better. That way you can manually specify, like, hey, okay, I need, 100 gigabytes, so let me do, however many megabytes that turns out to. And then you can choose exactly what you prefer there. So,
if you enjoyed this video and you want to learn even more, you can find my books at bookstoread.com/Jonathan. That's books, the number 2, read.com/JONATHAN.